so buckle up, guys. The longest-running criminal trial in U.S. history just so happened to revolve around pizza shops. It was a scheme only Sicilian-born men were capable of. Something so complex and intricate that by the end of it all, the judges, lawyers, prosecutors, and jury would have rather let them walk free than deal with the mess that said men created. $1.6 billion worth of heroin, control over all of New York City, a network so vast that the feds couldn't catch them all, and little pizza shops on every block. It was ingenious in itself. The man behind it all, Gaetano Badalamenti, hid his scheme behind perfectly crafted pizza. The recipe was simple. It was more technique than anything else. The dough was thick enough to hide all of their drug trafficking, but thin enough to get caught by the FBI. The cheese was ground, opaque enough to hide any extra charges of murder, assault, and money laundering, but transparent enough to get sentenced to 45 years. The sauce was, well, enough. The perfect balance between sweet and savory, a balance that kept them hidden for so long. To top it all off, they used a lot of basil, not for its sweetness with hints of mint, anodyne, and pepper, but for its ability to cover any traces they left behind. I guess, despite being as heavenly as it wasn't enough. I was inspired, you could say, so I did what any rational person would do. I opened up my own pizza shop. I dealt a twisted illusion of happiness like the boss himself dealt heroin. He might have had control over all of New York City, but I had control over so much more. Control that modeled Badalamenti himself, twisted and lucrative but effective. I ran a money-making business in my own mind. My specialty was selling lies to myself. Depression is kind of funny that way, slowly driving me mad. And so I withered away. I became a nocturnal animal of some sort, slept in all day, was up all night. I became incredibly irritable and irrational. Every sudden noise made me want to skin myself alive. Every small inconvenience shattered my mind. Any one glance towards my direction filled me with rage. My mind was a minefield filled with pieces of myself. Some corners held the appetite I once had. Others held everyone I once loved. Self-isolation is a hell of a weapon. Trenches were filled with all the time I didn't know I lost. Time I spent daydreaming because fantasy is always a little better than reality. I would grab a pair of tweezers in hopes of destabilizing the bombs, but I would always mix up the red and yellow wires, leaving me with more anxiety than I could manage. It was truly a war zone. One reenactments couldn't even get right. I was, for lack of a better analogy, a burnt pizza. And Badalamenti wasn't in any better shape than me. He was, simply put, a mastermind. I, his disciple, and together we ran the greatest schemes in the history books. But our efforts weren't enough because he sat in a prison cell until he rotted from the inside out, and I eventually broke, caved in, opened the windows, and realized my own scheme drove me mad, to the point I didn't recognize who I became. I was nothing but an abandoned pizza shop filled with broken cobwebs that covered the best parts of me, scuffed windows that left me with a dull view of the world, scratched countertops that ended up with more scars than it started out with, but that's okay. The best things in this world don't go unscathed. I had shattered mirrors that left me with a warped sense of self and a leaky roof. Insurance decided it didn't want to cover anything that didn't cause immediate harm. I guess the possibility of falling apart at any time wasn't reason enough. And you know what? I don't know much. I don't know if I was doomed from the start. I don't know if Badalamenti knew he was going to get caught all along, but one thing I do know is that the worst parts of us will always reveal themselves in the end. Gaetano Badalamenti never got to enjoy his view from the top, and I never even made it there. I have to plant new seeds and hope they grow even though the soil is tainted. I fertilize the ground with a bottle of prescription pills and a really nice lady I see every week. In due time, it will grow into a garden with blooming flowers, beautiful butterflies, and honeybees. Gaetano Badalamenti, the real-life godfather himself, didn't live the legacy he wanted. He didn't go out as the greatest mobster in history, but is now used as a tale to other gangs across the globe. Is now used as a trophy paraded by the FBI in its own archives, is now used as a poster child for a failed operation. And I am a great example of what happens when you fall apart. In the end, we weren't enough. Maybe we just needed a little more basil to cover our tracks.